In 1955, the Rebbe is surrounded by about 100 Hasidim, 100 of his followers. And he asks in the room, whoever wants to be wealthy, raise your hand. Only 4 people raised their hands. Eventually, these 4 people will become very successful businessmen, even though some of them had absolutely no background in business whatsoever. What happened over there? I always say, when I repeat this story, that if I was there, I would have raised my 2 hands. Why? Out of 100 people, only 4 people raised their hands. It seems that the Rebbe explained to everybody. For a long time before the Rebbe asked them to raise their hand, that they should not be materialistic. They should not live the American dream, not to live and to run in order to compete against your neighbor and have wall-to-wall carpet and live a materialistic life. After saying this, the Rebbe had emptied everyone from their any desire to be connected to physicality. And at that moment, precisely, the Rebbe says, whoever wants to be wealthy, raise your hand. Why? Because in order to be able to draw a new energy in the world, in order to draw wealth, you need to create a vacuum. You need to empty yourself of any desire for physicality. You need to not be needy. You need to be able to be wealthy at another level altogether. Our sages teach us on the verse Tefillah le Moshe, chapter 90 in the Tehillim, in the Psalms, where Moses prays to God. Tefillah le Moshe, the Zohar says this is the prayer of a wealthy man. How do you define the prayer of a wealthy man? What does a wealthy man pray for? He has it all. Well, what is wealth and what is poverty? The Talmud says that the difference between wealth and poverty is if you are a giver or a receiver. A wealthy person is a giver because he has it. He has the wealth. A person which is a poor person is a receiver. The moment that you position yourself as a giver, you are wealthy. But how can you give something you don't have? To this, the Rebbe explains that the Talmud says, En ani bedat ve'en ashir bedat, ela bedat, which means that the only wealth, the only barometer that can measure wealth and poverty is not what you have in your bank account, the assets that you own, but rather your state of mind. It's one thing to have a lot of knowledge. It's another thing to absorb the knowledge and making it your emotional reality, your personal reality. When knowledge becomes your personal reality, nobody can convince you of the opposite. You are driven, you have complete conviction, and you will succeed. That is a wealthy person. Wealth means that you are essentially wealthy. You are not dependent on anyone. And that was the prayer of Moses. Moshe wanted that the Jewish people should be wealthy. He wanted them to be able to experience their connection with God at a personal level. Not because so-and-so is connected, not because so-and-so is able to attain high levels, but rather you, once you make things personal, you don't need the support system of social media. You don't need the support system of a community. You can go out and be wealthy yourself. And somewhat, we can understand that this is exactly what the Rebbe did, the Moses of the generation, the Rebbe did with our generation. He brought every single one of us the power to have conviction at a personal level. to be sure of our path. And therefore, that's how you have, even 29 years after Gimel Tammuz, we haven't seen the Rebbe. You have more shluchim, more emissaries, which cover the face of the earth. In the furthest place as Iceland and Uganda and Nigeria and other remote places which you would never think of moving to. Over there, you have people which have been given the gift of wealth and now have become the givers to share the wealth with everyone. The Rebbe's message is that every single one of us is wealthy. It's time to connect to the study of Chassidut, to be able to understand the teachings of the Rebbe and to understand how wealthy we really are. And once we understand this, then it doesn't matter. If just like in this week's Parshat, you have a Korach, which himself was very rich, but he wasn't wealthy like Moshe Rabbeinu was wealthy. It was riches which were external to him. And therefore, he felt he was lacking. He needed to have a better position, a greater position. Let's not make the mistake of Korach. Let us connect to the tzaddik of the generation and follow his call. As the Rebbe announced that every single one of us is wealthy, everyone is a leader, and we need to be the leaders that are going to influence our surroundings and bring Mashiach.